All right, we are live. Hello. Let me get a couple things set up here, and in the meantime, talk amongst yourselves and all that good stuff. We have Den who is here helping me out with moderation. So leave your comments in the notes. We'll get to them in between stories. You can always support this channel by going to patreon.com/Hemant. You can subscribe to the newsletter here. Please do that if you haven't already. So many things to talk about. I know Den and I were just talking before we started. It was kind of a week where there was actually some decent political news, which is nice. So happy Tuesday to those of you who celebrated alongside me. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and get started here. The first thing I wanted to talk about is this bizarre answer that JD Vance gave to a woman at an event he was doing last week. And here's the premise for what happened. JD Vance was doing an event for, I think, Turning Point USA. This is the Charlie Kirk group. And I think the premise here was he's going to go to the University of Mississippi. He's going to do a Q&A. People, anybody is allowed to get in line and ask him a question, and he's going to have a meaningful chat/debate with you about it. Anyway, there was a woman who asked a question that honestly, there were a lot of parts to it. She asked a very long question. But she was criticizing him for some of the things he's said and done with regards to immigration. But there was one element of her question that was really interesting because of how JD Vance responded. And what you need to know is JD Vance is Catholic, his wife Usha is Hindu, and the student wanted to know, how do you guys make that work? How do you raise your kids so that they don't think one religion is better than the other? How do you make your interfaith marriage work? And I think part of the premise of that question is, I've seen what you say about non-Christians. I've seen what you say about immigrants. Well, your wife is I think, first generation Indian, South Asian. I think I Hindus are not Christians. So like, I know what you do with public policy, but what do you do in your own home when it comes to this stuff? So let me play for you the first part of this clip, and we'll talk about it right after that.
What I want to ask is,
Okay.
you are married to a woman who is not Christian. In her Wikipedia, I mean, I just looked that up. I wanted to know what her faith was. I didn't know this before. But she still calls herself Hindu. You are raising three kids in interracial, cultural, racial, religious household. How are you maintaining, or how are you teaching your kids not to keep your religion ahead of their mother's religion? Or how are you teaching them that your kind, they're that kind who got here just few years or few decades ago, is different or is better than your mom's kind who got here just a generation before?
Now, I thought that is an excellent question to ask him. And it's one that I don't think I've seen a lot of interviewers ask him before. But the reason that's a good question is JD Vance is very much a Christian nationalist. And if he doesn't call himself that, well, he allies himself with Christian nationalists. They're part and parcel of the Trump administration. He has spent his time in office propping up right-wing Christians who pretend that they are being persecuted, which is a lie. He has denigrated people who are not Christian. We've seen what people on the right have said about Zoran Mamdani. Why? Because he's Muslim and they don't like him. That's why. And we know JD Vance thinks Christians are better than non-Christians because everything he does points in that direction. So I like the question. What do you do at home? And at first, his answer was not that weird. Like, the best Steelman version of his response is that all couples who are from different faith backgrounds, you work through your differences together. You have shared values, even if you don't have shared religious views, and that helps a bit. He said he respected his wife respects him, etc. It didn't really sound like theology mattered to them all that much. But then he added a little more, and this is what people were really talking about if you heard anyone talking about this speech. This is a slightly longer clip, but this is the part I really wanted to show you. Let's see what you think about this bit.
You asked a personal question about our interfaith household. And yes, my wife did not grow up Christian. I think it's fair to say that she grew up in a Hindu family, but not a particularly religious family in either direction. In fact, when I met my wife, we were both, I would consider myself an agnostic or an atheist, and that's what I think she would have considered herself as well. You know, everybody has to come to their own arrangement here. The way that we've come to our arrangement is she's my best friend. We talk to each other about this stuff. So we decided to raise our kids Christian. Our two oldest kids who go to school, they go to a Christian school. Our 8-year-old did his first communion about a year ago. That's the way that we have come to our arrangement. But, thank you. My 8-year-old was also very proud of his first communion. Thank you, guys. I'll tell him that Old Miss wishes him the best. But I think everybody has to have this own conversation when you're in a marriage. I mean, it's true for friends of mine who are in Protestant and Catholic marriages, friends of mine who are in, atheist and Christian marriages. You just got to talk to the only advice I can give is you just got to talk to the person that God has put you with, and you've got to make those decisions as a family unit. For us, it works out. Now, most Sundays, Usha will come with me to church. As I've told her, and I've said publicly, and I'll say now in front of 10,000 of my closest friends, do I hope eventually that she is somehow moved by the same thing that I was moved in by church? Yeah, I honestly do wish that, because I believe in the Christian gospel, and I hope eventually my wife comes to see it the same way. But if she doesn't, then God says everybody has free will, and so that doesn't cause a problem for me. That's something you work out with your friends, with your family, with the person that you love. Again, one of the most important Christian principles is that you respect free will. Usha's closer to the priests who baptized me than maybe I am. They talk about this stuff. My attitude is you figure this stuff out as a family, and you trust in God to have a plan, and you try to follow it as best as you can. And that's what I try to do.
Okay. There's so much to unpack there. First of all, he said that when he was younger, he used to be agnostic or atheist. I believe that's very much in the vein of like Kirk Cameron, who has also said pretty much the same thing. He wasn't an atheist in the sense that he's like actively arguing that God doesn't exist. I think JD Vance says he's an atheist because he wasn't Christian. He never really thought about religion that much. He had other things on his mind. And his idea of, I didn't think about this stuff, that's what he thinks being an atheist was. I don't have the same definition. Not that big of a deal, but there you go. And also, he said he has friends who are in mixed faith marriages. That's not true. He does not have friends. So he's just lying. But okay, let's go to the substance of his answer, because there are gaping holes in some of the things he said there. Because even if neither he nor his wife were particularly religious when they met, which is entirely possible, both of them have very much leaned into their faith identities ever since they became public figures. Vance said they decided to, what did he say? Raise our kids Christian. Why? Why didn't you raise them Hindu? He didn't answer that. He also said, that's the way we have come to our arrangement, as if like, yeah, whatever I say goes. I'm the man, I'm the husband. So, that's how we compromised. We just do whatever I want. And I'm not sure that really answers the question there. And then he said he really hopes his wife converts. And the thing I wish, if they allowed follow-up questions, is, well, what are the chances you're going to convert? None. Of course he's not. No one expects like the Christian to convert. No one expects the husband in the mixed faith relationship to convert. So why does he think she's going to maybe change her mind? But there's no indication he's ever going to change his. And just because she has free will, JD Vance also ignored a different question, which is, if his wife is not a Christian, does he believe she's going to spend eternity in hell? Given his theology, the answer is yeah. He thinks his wife is going to hell. How does that not cause a problem for him? Like, if he just came out and said, look, I'm Catholic on paper, but let's be honest, I don't really think about it much. I don't care. Honestly, respect. That would make so much more sense, because if you just say you're Christian, but you're married to someone who's Jewish or someone who's Muslim or Hindu, and you're like, yeah, it doesn't cause us problems because, I don't know, neither of us really take our religions like that seriously. It's just something we grew up with. We like it. We're used to it. It's a cultural thing. Honestly, that makes plenty of sense. But he didn't say that, which means he really does believe his wife is going to hell, and he didn't account for that at all in their answers. Because he also said, I hope she becomes a Christian. I hope she becomes Catholic. But if she doesn't, meh, whatever. Like, I don't know, man. If you go to church, I was told she's a problem if she doesn't convert. So he didn't answer any of the relevant questions. He basically acted like all it boils down to is mutual respect, even though in their relationship, there is no mutual respect when it comes to religion, because his religion takes priority in their family. And there's no indication from his answer that her religion ever gets taken seriously at all. Like, at what point in that story, in his response, did he say, these are the things we do because we also want to honor the Hindu tradition? Nothing. He didn't say anything like that. And keep in mind, the backdrop of all of this is that the Trump administration is terrorizing communities of color, not just criminals, just whatever brown people they find on the street, and making it very clear that white people, most of whom are Christian, will always get preferential treatment no matter what this country says about religious freedom. You can find the headline right now. They're trying to give white South Africans preferential like immigration treatment because, those are the good kind of immigrants. He said the same thing about Europe, places in Europe, things like that. Now, after he said all this, JD Vance got a lot of criticism, mostly online, basically for throwing his wife's religion under the bus or under the couch, if you will. And Vance predictably was like, how dare you insult my faith? Because he sees everything as a personal insult. And this is what he tweeted out at the time. Here we go. What a disgusting comment. He's referring to a comment that he threw his wife's faith under the bus. And it's hardly been the only one along these lines. He accuses the lady asking the question of being to his left, as if that matters. But here's, I'm going to scroll down let's look at number 2 here. Second, my Christian faith tells me the gospel is true and is good for human beings. My wife, ... is the most amazing blessing. That's fine. She's not a Christian and has no plans to convert. But like many people in an interfaith marriage or any interfaith relationship, I hope she may one day see things as I do. But don't ask me follow-up questions about it because it doesn't matter. Who cares if she doesn't? Theology doesn't matter. Regardless, I'll continue to love and support her. That's nice because she's my wife. If you're not married to JD Vance and you are Hindu or a woman or brown, you're screwed. If you're married to him, it's fine. Third, posts like this reek of anti-Christian bigotry. Oh my God, it's not bigotry to call him out on his dumb answer. Yes, Christians have beliefs, and yes, those beliefs have many consequences. One of which is that we want to share them with other people. That is a completely normal thing, and anyone who's telling you otherwise has an agenda. My dude, we all know Christian beliefs come with consequences. We are living under the weight of them right now, but it's not bigotry to call out how bad his answer was because he really does not respect his wife, and that's what was clear. It's not bigoted to ask a leader in a racist, fascist administration how specifically he respects his brown wife's non-Christian faith. Like I said, he could have just said they're not really religious. They just play religious on TV, but you can't do that because that'll infuriate your white evangelical base. He also could have said, I respect my wife's beliefs, so my kids learn both of our beliefs. Yeah, they go to Catholic church sometimes, but also we send them to a Hindu temple so they can learn about that too, and the kids will get to decide what they believe when they're older. No, he didn't say that because that would actually be respectful. So he tried to have it both ways. He pleased nobody. One of the things that made me laugh, there is a group called the Hindu American Foundation, which I get annoyed by because Sarah Huckabee Sanders might say, Happy Diwali. And they'll be like, this is the greatest thing ever. What a good governor for honoring our tradition. And it's like, she's not a good person. You don't have to give her credit for that one. But they routinely praise Republicans for doing the bare minimum if they mention something Hindu. Well, even the Hindu American Foundation was like, we don't like J.D. Vance's answer. Check this out. With respect, J.D. Vance, you don't need to give him respect. If your wife encouraged you to re-engage with your faith, why not reciprocate that and engage with Hinduism too? If you did, you may well learn that Hinduism doesn't share the need to wish your spouse comes around to see things as you do. That is true. Hinduism is not an evangelical type of religion. We do not seek to convert anyone. And then, this is important. There is also a history of Christians denigrating Hindus, attempting to convert Hindus through sometimes unethical means. In recent months, we've seen an outpouring of anti-Hindu sentiment online, often coming from explicitly Christian sources. Yeah, Republicans are effing racist. Both of these underpin the sentiment that your statements regarding your wife's religious heritage are reflective of a belief that there is only one true path to salvation, a concept Hinduism simply doesn't have, and that path is through Christ. Damn. You're the VP. It's more than reasonable and well within precedent for a Christian public figure such as yourself to acknowledge the positive impact of Hinduism on Hindus and the rights of Hinduism to practice. Not bad, Hindu American Foundation. I appreciate that. I also wanted to show you one other thing here. This is from the New York Times. They pointed out in a June interview on Meghan McCain's podcast, Mrs. Vance said that while the children went to Catholic school, they could choose whether they wanted to be baptized. Look at what she says about how they're raising their kids. The kids know that I'm not Catholic, and they have plenty of access to the Hindu tradition from books that we give them. What does that even mean? I promise you, if you give little kids books about Hinduism, those are not getting read, so that doesn't help. She says they have access to the Hindu tradition, to things that we show them. What do you show them? Did you maybe watch a Bollywood movie once? Is that what you're talking about? That doesn't count. To the visit recently to India and some of the religious elements of that visit. So it's part of their lives, and they know many practicing Hindus as a part of their lives in their own family. Listen, if you take a trip to India and you pretend like, hey, we did some religious stuff during that visit. Listen, if you visit India and you go to a temple, that's like visiting Europe and going to a castle. It doesn't make you part of the monarchy. You're just a tourist. Doesn't mean anything. Having access to books doesn't mean kids are reading them, and having Indian parents or relatives doesn't really change that either. So even when Usha Vance is talking, she is downplaying elements of her faith and ceding ground to J.D. Vance's Catholicism. I don't know. I would have less of a problem if they just admitted religion is not that big of a deal in our family, but we have a zealot, rabid, frothing at the mouth voter base we have to appease. So let's just pretend we're super religious. It's really ironic because Donald Trump, no matter what label he uses to lie with, and no matter what he says in any speech, no one would seriously argue he's religious. And no one's asking Melania Trump about her faith because she doesn't have any thoughts worth listening to. In case you're wondering, she's also Catholic. I had to look that one up because who knew? I asked my friend Dale McGowan, who wrote this book that's right behind me, Atheism for Dummies. He also wrote a book once called In Faith and in Doubt, which was all about interreligious relationships between like atheists and people of faith, and like, how do you make it work and what are the obstacles? So the book is great, In Faith and in Doubt. I asked him, what did you make of J.D. Vance's comments about this? You want to know what he told me? He said, it certainly violates the foundational requirement of a successful interfaith marriage and does so with total disrespect for the other partner. And he was referring specifically to the wish that she would eventually convert. If you seriously believe that, your marriage is going to be on the rocks, according to Dale. And the question of how to make Catholic Hindu marriages work is also a sore subject for a lot of Indians, not Usha Vance, but other Indians, given how Christians have a long history of colonizing and converting people in brown countries. I don't know if you've also saw this, but over the past couple of weeks, while Vivek Ramaswamy is running for governor of Ohio, and he's Hindu, and I think Kash Patel, who's the FBI director, is also Hindu, they've been getting a lot of racist comments from their own Republican base because their Republican base does not see them as truly American. And they're spewing a lot of hate their way. And like, I don't like either of those two guys, but there are plenty of good reasons to criticize them that have nothing to do with their religion. But it is interesting to see what sort of base JD Vance is trying to cultivate here. I also wanted to show you, there was an article in Religion News Service, the Wire service, from Khyati Joshi, who is Hindu and married to, I believe, an Episcopalian. But she wrote something about what JD Vance's comments meant to her. When a sitting vice president makes this kind of statement at a political rally, that private conviction is amplified through the power of public office. It reverberates through a culture already grappling with whether Christianity alone defines morality, patriotism, and family values. It reinforces an old and persistent story about belonging in America. That wholeness, even love itself, ultimately depends on coming to Christ. Americans who are Hindu, Jewish, Sikh, Buddhist, and Muslim will hear Vance's hope that his wife converts as a public reminder that only one faith is really American. And I think that's another aspect of JD Vance's comments that is worth talking about when it comes to his wife, who on paper appears to be different from him in some very important ways. He stressed how they work through their differences. They have mutual respect. They have shared goals, like, raising our kids and helping Trump defeat democracy. But think about that. He says, I have respect for my wife. We have differences, but we work through them. We're partners. We have a shared goal. Well, how does JD Vance act toward Democrats who also have a goal of making our country better? You would think, on paper, right? When it comes to Democrats, JD Vance has no interest in working through anything with them. He lies about them. He demonizes them. He treats them as if they are not real Americans. That's why his answer also rings hollow. We know what he's like because we see what he's done. None of it's making him look good, but he wants everyone to believe that when he's behind closed doors at home, he's a completely different, thoughtful, respectful individual. Do you buy that? I don't. Like, this is a public confession of his religious hierarchy. It's his religion, then other kinds of Christians, then everyone else. That's how it goes. So to hope that your wife converts, that's not about affection or respect. That is a desire to dominate her. How much respect can you really have for a partner who you still think, years into your marriage, is lacking something that is vital to you? That matters only because he's the vice president. Not just because he's the vice president, because his attitude mirrors the Christian nationalism we see in his party. He's dismissing Hinduism as something his wife will eventually see through, right? Because it wouldn't be okay if she just stuck with it. She has to break free from it. And that tells you what he thinks about other Americans as well. The fact that his arrangement involves his children being raised as Christians, that's not a compromise. That's just reinforcing his hierarchy. He doesn't think Hindus are people of equal but different faith. He sees it as some cultural artifact that, his wife will eventually discard. And if she doesn't, well, their kids aren't going to be joining it anytime soon. That's how this administration treats everyone who's not one of their kind. It is funny that even in the supposed sanctity of his own marriage, JD Vance cannot seem to imagine a union that doesn't revolve around him and his beliefs. I'll stop there for now. What questions we got here? Thank you for becoming a YouTube member. I appreciate that. He probably is still an atheist. That's all part of their power charade. Hey now, do not put him in our category. He is very much, one of those like apathetic, well, call him an apatheist. He doesn't care, but he knows what's good for him politically. I would not be surprised. I mean, do you remember like Inauguration Day Trump and Vance, like earlier this year, they sat at, I think, an Episcopal church, and the lady who was the minister that day, she basically reamed into them, telling them to open their hearts and not be assholes. And they look so uncomfortable because, one, she was criticizing them and they're not used to that. And two, they're inside of a church and they are not comfortable in those situations unless someone is sucking up to them publicly. So it doesn't make him an atheist. I mean, listen, if he is, but I think he just doesn't care. If he doesn't care, that's fine. I wish he would tell the truth about that. Conflating meh unaffiliated with atheist. Yeah, I think he is meh unaffiliated. Different category. I wish the people who did surveys would use that one. That seems to encapsulate a lot of Americans. I may have missed it, but how long have they been married? I could be wrong here. I'm guessing. I think it's like in the 10-year, maybe a little more than that mark, because they have 3 kids who are around that age. So something like that. I love and respect her. I just wish she would change all of her beliefs to mine. Yeah, I mean, you get it. It sounds weird. That's not what you say about someone you actually love and respect. You can have disagreements, but again, when it comes to something that JD Vance wants us to believe is a core part of his identity, there are some gaps that you just cannot cross. You can't build a bridge around them, and I wish he would just admit that. As a family, aka he decides for everyone or they get divorced. Yeah. I mean, yeah, we decide everything as a family and it happens to be whatever I want. I don't buy Vance being sincere about anything. Yeah, me neither. I saw him, I don't know if it was at the University of Mississippi thing, but he gave a speech recently and you can just tell the lack of charisma. And I don't even mean that in a mean way. I mean, if Trump is not on the ballot, if you think JD Vance is going to pick up the MAGA torch and carry it onward, no, he's not. The people who come out to support Trump are not going to come out and support Vance the same way. He doesn't have whatever it is you want to say Trump has, which he does. I mean, it works for him, but Vance doesn't have it. All right, I'm jumping to another story. Give me a second here. All right. I have a guess. Am I right? Am I right? I was wrong. Right part of the world, wrong answer. All right. We are going to talk about Texas because the Texas Supreme Court did something recently that was quiet, but kind of a big deal. And it involves this right here. They just issued an order. It's not a ruling. They just said this is an order adopting a comment to Canon 4 of the Texas Code of Judicial Conduct. This is like the rule book for ethics when it comes to judges. And among other things in this rule book, it says things like you shouldn't do anything that might be seen as partisan. You don't want to give people the idea you can't be fair. You can't adjudicate a case fairly. And so here they are saying, we made a quick change. And if you scroll down, everyone signed off on it. There's 8 people on this list. I think there was one who did not sign off on it, but not because he disagreed. He just wasn't there. But it's a 1-page thing. And here you go. Here's the comment. It is not a violation of these canons for a judge to publicly refrain from performing a wedding ceremony based upon a sincerely held religious belief. And as soon as you see those words right there, sincerely held religious belief, you know some shit is going down. So let's talk about what this means and why this one sentence is a big freaking deal here. And to make sense of it, you got to understand who this woman is. Her name is Diane Hensley. You could see it right there. So here's what happened with Diane. Okay, so we have to go back to 2019. It is December, and Diane over here is one of the Texas justices of the peace. And she has the ability to sign wedding certificates for various couples. And she said, if a couple visits my courthouse and they're gay, I don't want to sign their marriage license. Even though I am not a priest, I'm just a public official, I don't want to sign those gay wedding certificates. And the thing is, she very much said, oh, if you're straight, I will sign your certificates. And by the way, I think they get paid if they do the ceremony. It's a little side hustle for the judges. She said, I totally want to do that for straight couples, just not the gay ones. And when she said that, she was given a public warning from the Texas Commission on Judicial Conduct. They basically said, listen, you have a choice. You can do no weddings, or you can do all the legal weddings, but you don't get to pick and choose based on, the sexual orientation of the people involved. And when I say they gave her a warning, I'm not kidding about that. This is a slap on the wrist. They didn't remove her from the job. They didn't fine her, sue her, anything like that. They just said, hey, Diane, you're casting doubt on your ability, your capacity to act impartially. And if you kind of keep doing this, we may actually have to punish you. That's what their letter to her said. And what did Diane do in response to that letter? She sued the Commission on Judicial Conduct. This is from 2019. In its lawsuit, First Liberty argues that First Liberty is a right-wing legal group. The commission violated the Texas Religious Freedom Restoration Act by investigating and punishing Judge Hensley for recusing herself from officiating at same-sex weddings in accordance with the commands of her Christian faith, adding, by investigating and punishing her for acting in accordance with the commands of her Christian faith, the state of Texas has substantially burdened the free exercise of her religion with no compelling justification. And that's such a wild thing to say about her. Like, no compelling justification? The compelling justification is that people deserve to be treated equally under the law. That's it. Gay people have a right to get their wedding certificates signed off on, their marriage license, and they should be allowed to go to a judge and get it signed. And a judge who offers to perform ceremonies for straight couples but not gay ones shouldn't be a judge. What are you doing at that point? You don't care about the law. So being Christian should not be a get out of jail free card for just doing your damn job. It's not okay when Kim Davis does it, even though they're fighting this thing. It's not okay when Diane Hensley does it. And they said she was substantially burdened. In no way did the commission impede on her rights by telling her, follow the law so we don't have to punish you for it. She was suing. She was asking for $10,000 in damages because that's the money she would have made from her wedding ceremony side hustle. And she also wanted a declaration that anyone in my position is also allowed to say no to gay couples. So in 2021, a judge tosses out her entire case, but they do it on a technicality, basically saying you're not allowed to sue the ethics commission because they warned you about something you didn't like. That makes no sense. And an appeals court later said, yeah, what that earlier court said. But then Diane Hensley said, well, I know people at the Texas Supreme Court, so I'm going to ask them to step in and weigh in on this. And in 2023, we literally had arguments in front of the Texas Supreme Court about this situation. And who was representing Diane Hensley? It was a guy named Jonathan Mitchell, who is best known as the guy who is behind the Texas abortion bounty hunter law. The one that says if you know someone who had an abortion and you rat them out, we'll pay you for it. That's Jonathan Mitchell. And this is what he said at the time in 2023. Mitchell further argued that state law protects people's religious freedom unless there is a furtherance of a compelling government interest. He also said it prohibits wedding officiants from discriminating based on race, national origin, or religion. And he said, notably absent from that list of protected criteria I just mentioned is any mention of discrimination on account of sex or sexual orientation. He is saying it's totally legal if Judge Hensley doesn't want to marry a couple because of their sex or sexual orientation. Totally fine. It's still permissible for wedding officiants, whether they're judges or members of the clergy, to discriminate based on anything else as long as it's not race, national origin, or religion when they decide which weddings they will officiate. So you see, the Republican position here is discrimination is good as long as, legally you didn't put it on the list. Therefore, the dog is allowed to play basketball. Air Bud rules, they apply here. So apparently, they're seriously going to the Supreme Court and saying she's Christian, so she shouldn't have to follow the law. And that's all. She's not allowed, technically, he said, to be a racist bigot, but she is allowed to be an anti-LGBTQ bigot, even though both of those things involve characteristics you don't choose for yourself. Now, Hensley could have avoided all of this if she just said, I don't want to perform marriages. No wedding ceremonies for me. That's it. Like, no one was forcing her to do that, but she wanted the ability to get paid to perform straight wedding ceremonies while denying gay couples the right to get married. She thought her religion took priority over the law, and she's a government official. So, the problem here is if you allow government officials to do that, it throws the government into chaos. It makes a mockery out of civil rights. And honestly, I don't even know how seriously they take we would never discriminate on account of race, because guess what? There are some Christians out there who will say God doesn't want the races intermingling. So I have heard stories of churches that kicked people out because they were mixed race. It happens, not often, but that's a real thing people have. So what's stopping a judge from saying my faith says I don't do interracial marriages? Is that racial discrimination, or is it your Christian beliefs taking precedence, right? And as the ethics commissioner told the same Supreme Court, no one's threatening this lady. No one's punishing her. No one's punishing her for her religious views. We are going after her for her actions. If a Christian judge says, I am not performing any marriages because of my anti-gay bigotry, that's fine. Hensley wanted to offer the service, but take same-sex couples off her client list. That was the problem. So, interesting situation. By the way, this has nothing to do with the story, but a couple of years ago, the Dallas Morning News did an article about Hensley, and they had this tidbit that is wild. Hensley said her older brother, who died of ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, was gay. Oh, interesting. But look at this. After he had a falling out with their parents over what she described as economics, Hensley said she hired a detective to track him down once a year and take a photograph as a gift for their mother. One year he was in Paris, another year in Japan, then Dubai. This crazy lady stalked her gay brother who wanted nothing to do with the family in order for the stalker to take proof of life photos that she could send to their mother. Holy crap. This family is so effing weird. So anyway, this is where we're at right now. Anyway, her lawyers also argued that the U.S. Supreme Court is on our side about this because they allowed a Colorado website designer who said, I don't want to make wedding websites for gay couples. They sided with her, which is a weird case because literally 0 gay couples asked that lady to make them a wedding website. But that's how Christians do lawsuits. And also there's a difference between a private business owner and a government official. I don't know why her own lawyers didn't get that. So that was in 2023. What was the Texas Supreme Court going to do about this case? Honestly, it didn't really get resolved. They kind of avoided the religious freedom argument, and then the Texas Commission on Judicial Conduct dismissed any warnings against Hensley. And then an appeals court said, you're still allowed to sue if you want to. It was just a hot mess, very confusing to follow. Meanwhile, there was another judge in Diane Hensley's situation who filed his own lawsuit for basically the same reasons. At some point here, the Texas Supreme Court needed to weigh in on this matter. And that brings us to what I said at the beginning of this segment, which is they recently passed a rule about this. And again, here's the rule that they passed. It is not a violation of these canons for a judge to publicly refrain from performing a wedding ceremony based upon a sincerely held religious belief. So they're not even ruling on a case. They just kind of threw it out there. What this means is if a judge has a faith-based reason for denying the marital legitimacy of a couple that wants to get married, they cannot be reprimanded for ethical violations. You can't say, well, this kind of makes you look like a bigot and I don't feel safe in your courtroom. Doesn't matter, it's not a violation of the code. Like, by this logic, I wonder, because again, I want to go back to this. What does this say? If you don't want to perform a wedding ceremony because of your sincerely held religious beliefs, it's fine. It's not a violation of the ethics rules. What is stopping another judge from saying, I'm not performing a ceremony for mixed race couples? Or if you want to argue, well, race is not allowed as a factor. Well, what about a judge who says, I don't want to perform a wedding for this couple because I know they had sex before they got married. They've talked about it. Is that allowed? That's legal. Like, I don't know. And it also doesn't mean the judges are off the hook, because what if a gay couple, goes to a Texas court to get married and a judge refuses to sign off on it because of their faith? Maybe the ethics commission won't go after them, but the gay couple can still sue the judge for violating the law, which is what happened in the Kim Davis situation, right? This is what one professor said about all of this. Let me show you this. Here we go. Jason Mazzoni, a law professor at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, what did he say? Someone could, however, challenge a judge's decision not to marry gay couples on constitutional equal protection grounds in the future. One of the claims I think will be made in response to litigation, in litigating that, is that, well, there are other people who can perform the wedding ceremony, so you can't insist that a particular judge does it. But that, of course, is not how equal protection works. And it's not how we expect government officials to operate, which is true. Like, if you go to the government, you should expect the same service as everybody else. That's kind of why we do it. And this lady has a no gays allowed policy for her wedding ceremonies. So I don't know what happens now. Like, on the one hand, gay couples are free to get married if they want to, but now the state's highest court says judges who don't want to perform the ceremony and sign the necessary documents can deny you the paperwork that you need to get married. That is state-sanctioned discrimination. So this is not some minor tweak to the ethics code. It is a declaration that Christian prejudice is compatible with public service as long as you're like wearing a cross when you do it. And it sends a message to LGBTQ people in Texas that your humanity is conditional and it's entirely based on what judge you're in front of. And who knows where else that slippery slope is going to lead. So this is power. This is Christian power. If they say I have a sincerely held religious belief, it overrides civil rights laws. We've seen that at the federal level. We are seeing that at the state level. And it's kind of sad that Texas has chosen to use religion as a weapon this way, but that's not news. They're making it easier to discriminate against certain groups of people who are already struggling to protect the rights they have. So, sad situation. I will stop there for now. Thanks for becoming a YouTube member. I appreciate that. Thanks for the donation. Lawrence goes at the same time as Obergefell. Oh, you're saying that the case that said sodomy is not illegal may be overturned as soon as the Supreme Court overturns the marriage equality ruling. I used to think the Supreme Court would take small steps when they want to walk back civil rights law, but they're very much swinging for the fences and doing anything they can right now to hurt vulnerable communities. So I wouldn't be surprised if you're right, but that is frightening. Is Texas any different from Tehran? Oof. I mean, they're also brown. I mean, it's not that. I mean, that's the scary thing. It's not every time we talk about Texas, it very much seems like these are theocrats who are getting their way. And that's, I guess, where you're coming from with that question. But man, the question I want to ask is, does Ted Cruz understand what you're saying here? Does Greg Abbott? Do any of these guys understand that they are religious nutballs, except they're doing it for a different team than Tehran? I don't know. How does that translate to other parts of her job? For example, what if Diane Hensley is overseeing a trial and a same-sex spouse cites spousal privilege as a reason not to testify? Yeah, it's an interesting question. I don't know the answer to it. I have no indication she's ever denied one of these people in this type of relationship the ability to do what the law required. But I think it's a fair question. If you're going into her courtroom and you know she has anti-LGBTQ bias, I don't know. I would do everything in my power if I were in those shoes to request a different judge because she cannot be trusted. When you're a public figure, you have restrictions on what you should say. It's about protecting the integrity of what you're representing. These people have to get over that fact. Right. I mean, the Supreme Court, have you ever seen any interviews with the Supreme Court justice? They're boring as hell because they're not allowed to talk about anything that matters. So they always talk about like, well, democracy is nice and judges are these types of people. Like they never say anything of value, even judges I like, because yes, they are restricted. And it seems like politicians have forgotten that that rule should apply to them too. Who married JD and Usha? You know what's interesting? I think they did two types of ceremonies because I feel like I've seen pictures of JD Vance wearing Indian garb because they must have done an Indian ceremony, which, by the way, would not have been weird if you're marrying into an Indian family and you're not JD Vance at the time. You're not a politician. You're just guy who graduated from Yale Law School and wrote a crappy book. It would not be weird to me that they had both kinds of ceremonies. And if you're JD Vance, you sit there and you take it. You deal with it. It's a long ceremony, but whatever. This is the family you're marrying into. So I assume they had two types of ceremonies, even if only one of them counted. All right, I'm jumping to another story. Give me a minute here. That one I know. Aren't they making a new movie with Miss Piggy? Forgot who's in it, but it's like famous people. They should just put Miss Piggy in a movie where she's the only non-human character and just don't draw attention to it. Just put her in there. No one will know. Okay. We have to talk about this lady right here. I'm proud of myself for this screenshot. Her name is Marisol Arroyo Castro. She's a teacher, and here's what happened. She's been teaching for over 3 decades. She has spent the past 2 decades teaching elementary and middle school in a public school district in New Britain, Connecticut. And earlier this year, she was put on paid leave because basically school officials heard and then looked and saw that there was something wrong with her classroom. And this right here is her classroom, or at least a part of it. And if we zoom in here, you got some schedules, some drawings. It's cute, very nice. And then you see this cross right over here. And so this is what this whole situation is all about. The cross had apparently been there when she worked at De Loretto Elementary School, when she was switched to teaching 7th grade, like last year. It moved to the middle school with her, and no one really seemed to notice that she had this crucifix. I guess if you're teaching like 3rd graders, 4th graders, maybe they didn't understand the significance of it, and they probably did not know what the legal issues would be with it. But when she got to the middle school, that sort of thing stands out. And if you're a student who's aware of these types of church-state issues, or you're a student who's coming to terms with your own religious identity, you might look at that cross and say, wait a minute, I don't think the teacher is supposed to have this here. And I'm going to jump ahead for a second and say this lady later filed a lawsuit. But check out what she Whoops, let me find this right here. There we go. This is what she eventually said in her lawsuit. Let's see, number 19 right here. Having the crucifix, in her view, at her desk brought Miss Castro daily calm. Throughout her school days, looking at the crucifix provided her with peace and strength, especially when the already stressful task of teaching young students proved particularly challenging. During her lunch breaks, rather than going to the teacher's lounge, she would remain at her desk, look at the crucifix, and pray. Okay, I mean, she's not the sort of colleague I want, but whatever. I don't actually care if she privately wants to pray during her free time. That's fine. But also, it makes you wonder, why do you need the cross in your classroom? Keep it in the office. If you don't have an office, keep it in the car. Keep it inside your desk and pull it out whenever you need it when students are not in the classroom, right? So, what happened? This is up in her classroom at the beginning of 2023. Beginning of 2024 when she starts working in the middle school. And in December of that year, so last December, the school's vice principal sent her an email basically saying, hey, I think we need to have a meeting about this. And by the way, if you want to, you can bring a union rep with you to defend you as much as you want. And it wasn't, this principal made clear, this is not a disciplinary meeting. We're not like firing you or anything, but we do need to warn you, like you've done something wrong. We need to explain it so it doesn't happen again. And then we will shake hands and be on our way, right? That's what this is about. So they met. And the day after they met, the vice principal sent an email to her just summarizing, hey, remember we met yesterday? This is what we talked about. And here is that email that he sent her. Hi, Miss Castro. Thank you for taking the time to meet with me today for less than 20 minutes in a non-disciplinary meeting. You know they very much got to do the paperwork formally, so this is a very professional email. During the meeting, which was attended by your union rep, I shared that any permanent displays of religious symbols are prohibited from public schools based on the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. I shared the cross you have displayed in your classroom behind your desk must be taken down by Monday. You inquired if you could think about it or pray on it, which I replied that you could. However, it's not going to change the outcome of this meeting. Like, go nuts. Go pray all you want. You're still not allowed to have it. Your next question was, what if I don't take it down? And I replied that it would lead to insubordination and disciplinary measures. I understand this is difficult. Thanks for complying. I'll stop by your room on Monday morning to make sure it's no longer there. Thank you. Have a great weekend. Honestly, that's about as professional and non-threatening of a work letter as you can get from your boss. So he sends her that letter. Seems pretty straightforward, but apparently Arroyo Castro did not take down the cross on Monday. So what did the administration do? Well, they basically gave her another chance. They said, can you like put the cross somewhere where it's not shoved in kids' faces? Put it inside your desk. Put it on the legs of your desk so it's not visible during the class, during classes, and then take it out whenever you want during your private time. And she's like, no. And then her lawyers argued. Her lawyers said this in the same lawsuit. Check this out. Following the meeting, all the attendees walked to Miss Castro's classroom. And that is when one of the administrators told Miss Castro to attach the crucifix to the underside of her desk by her legs. In contrast, other teachers at this school have not been forced to hide their personal items under their desks. Wow, that sounds like she's getting treated unfairly, doesn't it? Well, what type of personal objects are we talking about? I just want you to sit with this for a second. They said she's being treated unfairly. You found her personal item and said, put it away. You don't do that to the other teachers. And then her lawyers said, we made a list of what other teachers have at their desks, and you don't make them hide any of it. And let's find out. Here we go. Examples of personally expressive items immediately around or on the desks of DiLoretto teachers, other than her, include the following. Let us see. Action figures and images of Wonder Woman. A desk mat with images of Baby Yoda, which I assume is God in some religions. A miniature picture of the Mona Lisa. Why didn't you make the teacher hide that? A New England Patriots football team pennant. I mean, to be fair, you should be fired if that's in your classroom. I agree on that front. A Connecticut State University decal. Photos of families and pets. How dare these people? Inspirational phrases such as, yes, you can. You are loved. Keep calm and call Wonder Woman. They love Wonder Woman. And every day matters. Oh, and the best one. By the way, there were other items with religious origins or connotations, such as a picture of Santa Claus, a coffee mug with a citation to chapter 31 of the biblical book of Proverbs. Proverbs 31 is the chapter it's the chapter and verse all about how to be a good, godly woman. They had a photograph of the statue of Virgin Mary. Oh, and a Christmas tree. Why didn't you make the other teachers take down their Christmas trees? Keep in mind, are any of these things actually big deals? That sounds kind of crazy. And the best part about this is they literally included in their exhibits a picture of some of this stuff. And I just want to show you, they mentioned that coffee mug, right? Get a load of this. This is the picture they included of the teacher with the coffee mug. That's it. You could see in the number 1 is the pet photo. Number 2 is the coffee mug with biblical citations. This is what they're complaining about. Let us zoom in, shall we, for a second? There's the picture of a dog. Well, that's blasphemous. And there's your coffee mug. This is what the teacher's lawyers included. Like, you allow that to stay up there. It has a Christian thing on it. You didn't ask her to take that down. You can't even see that it has a Bible verse written on it. It's like if you go to Inside Out, and I'm sorry, if you go to In-N-Out Burger, like if you're on the West Coast and you look at the underside of the cup, you'll see a Bible verse there. If you don't know to look for it, you won't notice it. But if you lift up your cup and look, you'll find it. I think Steak and Shake does the same thing, don't they? Anyway, that's what this mug is. This is what the teacher said was unfair treatment, because you allow this lady to keep that mug, but you're making me take down my cross. How dare you? Honestly, these people are nuts. And then, what else did she say in here? So, after all this happens, and the school's trying to take care of this, eventually, this lady caves. And she says, fine, I will take down my cross. And that's good news, right? But check this out. This is number 30. As soon as she put her hand on the crucifix to move it, Miss Castro felt sick and grew distraught. The other attendees left her sobbing only minutes before a scheduled parent-teacher conference. Miss Castro left the crucifix under the desk that night, but the next morning, Wednesday, December 11th, 2024, hashtag never forget, Miss Castro returned the crucifix to its place on the wall. She did so out of personal conscience and sincere religious conviction that to do otherwise would be an affront to her faith. She informed the defendants of her decision. How much does it suck to be an administrator at this school, where this is the shit you got to deal with? So at this point, she tells the administrators, I'm not taking down my cross. It makes me physically sick to take it down. And they say, fine, we got to deal with this now. So they put her on paid leave, which they have every right to do until the situation gets resolved. And she refused to compromise, though, so the school had no other choice. They also said, hey, if you want to come back, you can come back, but you can't come back with the cross. And she's like, no, I want my cross. And her lawyers even said, this is just like Joe Kennedy's case, which is in front of the Supreme Court. Joe Kennedy was that showboating Christian football coach who demanded the right to pray at midfield right after the final whistle of football games. And he would have these huge mob crowds around him praying with him because he wanted all the attention. And the Supreme Court said, you got to let the man have his private Christian prayers, even though none of the facts that they said matched up in the case. So this lady's saying, I'm just like Joe Kennedy. When I'm not forcing my views on anybody, I just want to be able to practice my faith. And if some kids happen to see it, so what? That is what her lawyers were arguing. And the school was like, it's not the same thing. You're in the middle of class. What are you talking about? At least Joe Kennedy waited until after the final whistle. You're not doing this after the final bell rings. This is up in the middle of school. So anyway, we're now at January of 2025. This lady has not returned to the district. She filed a lawsuit with the help of the right-wing group, First Liberty Institute. And this is what that group said. I'm going to come back to that in a second. But they filed this lawsuit that I've been reading you this whole time. And I just want to be clear. No one was suggesting she was trying to convert kids in class. She was not pointing to the crucifix during lessons. Like, the argument was, by having it up there, you are indirectly sending a message that Christianity is good, other religions are not, that you favor students who are Christian. This is why you don't allow teachers to put up a pentagram if they're Satanists, or you don't allow them to put up a sign that says they're an atheist or whatever. And if this were an Islamic symbol, we would not be having this discussion right now because they would have put a stop to it immediately. Anyway, in response to all this, the district told the court, listen, we're following the law. We went by the book for all of this. Yeah, other teachers have personal items in their classrooms, but if they're violating the law, we would ask them to take it down too. But those other teachers are not violating the law, right? And the fact that we never punished teachers for this before, which was an argument Arroyo Castro's side made, the fact that we haven't punished anyone for this is because they didn't do anything. No one else has displayed a crucifix, and so we haven't punished anybody for that. My favorite thing about the district's response to the lawsuit is that Arroyo Castro's lawyer said, listen, her crucifix is really small. And under that line, the school district says, denied. It is not a small cross. And they also denied the fact that she said she was pressured by the school district to resign or retire early and sign an agreement not to sue the district. And the district says none of that is true. Anyway, it's been almost a year since this lawsuit was filed. And this Monday, a federal district judge, Sarah Russell, who is a Biden appointee, she finally ruled that it looks like the school district did everything by the book. Like, they didn't violate this woman's rights when they said she was breaking the law by having this crucifix in her classroom. And they said they have every right to punish her for insubordination. And specifically, this judge wrote in her decision that the cross is not just passive. Check this out, because this was not in the original lawsuit either. I want to make sure I highlight this wherever it went. Of course, it's not showing up now when I want to share it with you. Oh, I'm so mad I can't find this now. Okay, I'll just read it to you. But apparently in the decision, the judge said students complained that Miss Castro was exposing students to religion in the classroom, and also that Miss Castro was making religious comments to students in the classroom. And apparently this is why the administrators even looked in her classroom in the first place, because apparently when she was disciplining students for acting badly in class, which does happen, she was saying things to them like, I hope Papa God helps you with your lies. Or she was saying, go find God to the bad students. And the school's like, you can't be doing that. Let's have a quick chat. And they go into her classroom and they see this crucifix. I love this. The judge also cited Joe Kennedy. Let me see if I could pull this up. Sorry, I had this all there and now it's like all disappearing. Here we go. Check out what the judge said right here. While she was with students in the classroom for class, Miss Castro fulfilled her core duties and acted in her capacity as a teacher. But unlike the students in Joe Kennedy's case, who were engaged in other activities while the coach prayed, Miss Castro's students received the religious message when they were required to be present in the classroom receiving instruction from Miss Castro. That is kind of incredible. I also want to note the judge pointed out in a footnote that even Kennedy's lawyers here it is. Look in this footnote right here. At oral argument in Kennedy, a lawyer for Mr. Kennedy acknowledged that a teacher offering a prayer in the classroom during instructional time would, of course, be speaking pursuant to his or her official duties. Basically, Joe Kennedy's lawyers said, listen, if he were praying during class or during the football game, of course that would be illegal. But Joe Kennedy is praying after the game. If a teacher was pushing religion on kids during instructional time, that would not be okay. And the judge is pointing out, I don't think you want to cite Kennedy in defense of what you are doing, because even their lawyers were like, what you're doing is wrong. And that is hilarious. And so at the end of this entire decision, or close to the end, look at what the judge says right here. Under these circumstances, based on the existing factual record, I conclude that Miss Castro is unlikely to prevail on her claim that the display of the crucifix on the wall of the classroom constitutes speech as a private citizen rather than pursuant to her job duties as a teacher. Therefore, I conclude she's not likely to prevail on her free speech claim. You don't get to pretend you're just a random citizen. You have the right to put up a cross. That's not how this game works. The judge said she doesn't have a right to a free exercise claim. She's not going to win this case. And so the bottom line is Arroyo Castro has a choice. She can return to the classroom and play by the rules, no crucifix on the wall, or she can just admit that pushing religion on kids is more important to her than educating them. And she's going with that latter option. And in response to all of this, her lawyers were so mad. Today's decision flies in the face of clear Supreme Court precedent, requiring a teacher to purge their workspace of anything religious is blatant discrimination that violates the First Amendment. We will appeal and continue to fight for Marisol's religious liberty rights. All of that is a lie. They didn't make that teacher remove the mug that with that tiny little Proverbs 31 on there. No one's saying that. So what are they talking about? They didn't even require her to purge her workspace. They said, can you not have the cross on the wall? This isn't church. Put it in your desk. Put it under your desk. Use it when you're not teaching a class. We don't care. But what you're doing right now crosses a line. And what are these conservative lawyers saying? They wanted her to purge her workspace. Bull. And what did Marisol Arroyo Castro say? I am extremely disappointed with the decision by the court. I still hope that I will be able to return to the classroom and continue to invest in the lives of students as I have my whole teaching career. You can return to the classroom. No one's stopping you. But you got to play by the rules. This is not complicated. It's the right decision by the judge. It is a sharp rebuke to Christian teachers who think they can get away with anything. And I think this shows you this is how Christian nationalists have this warped misunderstanding about the boundaries of faith in a secular space. What this lady was doing, it's not courage. It's not religious freedom. It's arrogance, right? She wasn't punished for being Christian. She was disciplined for deciding that her personal beliefs should override the rights of the students in her classroom. And the school district acted patiently and responsibly. They offered compromises. They did not mock her faith. They did not humiliate her. They did their jobs, which is something she refused to do. Like at a time when we are seeing church-state separation just get eroded and eroded, this is a reminder that no, some judges know what they're doing. They can stop this shit in its tracks. And no teacher's religion gives them the authority to override the Constitution just because they feel like it. All right, I will stop there with this one. What questions we got with this story? Whew. Thank you for the donation. In Quebec and France, it's illegal for any civil servant or politician to display religious symbols while on the clock. And this is interesting because I know, at least in Quebec, I feel like their law banning religious symbols, which I think says if you're a Muslim public school teacher, you can't wear your hijab, you can't wear a yarmulke, you can't wear a cross necklace. I feel like at some point that goes too far, because if a Muslim is wearing a hijab, I'm not taking that as a sign she wants to convert me, as opposed to this lady who has the cross on the wall, which is very much not a personal thing anymore. That's not a religious rule that you got to do it. That's just her being arrogant. So I don't think these are parallel situations, and I think the Quebec law has gotten a lot of criticism because it's basically a law designed to shove religious people who show their faith outwardly in any way. It's basically purging them from government service. And I don't know, man. I don't think they need to be doing that. And I think that goes too far. And now you are talking actual claims of religious persecution at that point. So, different issue. I guess Baby Yoda is the icon of the Jedi religion, right? Couldn't you argue that's a religious relic? Thanks for that donation. At least that religion isn't oppressing us. And now she's a martyr. She's so trying to be. All these people, Joe Kennedy, they all want to be martyrs for the cause. And it's always over the dumbest shit. I wonder how that would work if someone had a picture of them at a church event or something. I'm guessing that wouldn't be a problem. You want a picture of your child getting baptized on your desk, but it's facing you and not the kids? Like, who cares? I don't think anyone's putting up a fight over that, because clearly you're not using that picture to convert your kids. You're using that because it's a happy thing for you. And I don't care about that. That is different from the cross on the wall that you got to put over here where everyone can see it. Wonder Woman teacher is probably the teacher all the kids like. I had the same thought. And she's jealous, which I think is a sin. So someone should tell her. Damn right. How dare you? You should not be jealous of the good teachers at the school. The way she reprimanded the bad kids by talking about Papa God. I mean, listen, all teachers have to discipline kids, but there is an art to that, because ideally you can discipline them while still keeping them on your good side if you're a good teacher. Not saying that's easy. I've been in the other situation too, where I'm the bad guy. It's not fun, but I'm saying I can tell why this lady is not the fun teacher at the school. Where did she teach before Connecticut? Mississippi? How could someone think they had a right to force a religion on other people's children? I do wonder if you taught elementary school. Maybe it's possible she had this up, and I think she did in the district for the past several years, but no one even thought to look for it. No one complained about it, because again, if you're little kids, you don't realize that's an issue or why that's a problem, so kids aren't talking about it. But when you get to older school, if you get to high school, middle school, kids are going to realize, wait a minute, there's something up with that. I watched too many videos online to know that that's not okay. So she might have just gotten away with it for a while. I really didn't want to say anything about the picture of her at the beginning of the story, but now I see she always just had an eye on the cross. Commendable. I have no comment on that. We're not going to do personal attacks on looks. Hey, friendly atheist and chat friends. Hello. Welcome. Like, how many tabs do you have open? Oh my God. I have so many tabs open right now, and so many more for the stories yet to come. And it slows down my entire computer. I've been saying this to my family forever. It's like, I need to get a new computer just so I can handle all the tabs I need to keep open. It's not the live streaming stuff. It's all the tabs I need to keep open. And then I need like 7 screens right here so I can just like do that and move stuff around. I missed your chat with Service and Vice Rhino earlier. How did that go? It was pleasant. Vice Rhino was the only one there. It was a fun conversation. He raised some money for charity. It was pleasant and totally casual. I'm sure it's on his YouTube channel too, if you're interested in checking that out. All right. I will jump to another story and close 1% of my tabs. I have my guess. Yes. And I think, to the person who just said it was Mr. Burns, I do think that is where they picked up him answering it that way, because that is true. That's how Alexander Graham Bell did it. Okay. You won't believe this. I have good news coming out of Texas, which we don't get to say it much. I know that last story sure felt like a good news story, but this has to do with the elections this week. There was some good news out of Texas, which is that the third largest school district in the state of Texas, it's the Cypress Fairbanks Independent School District, or Cy-Fair. For years now, their Board of Education has been dominated by conservatives. Look at the dateline on this, November 9th, 2023. And you could see from this article, Republican endorsed candidates dominate the Cy-Fair school board race. And basically, for a couple years now, conservatives have had like a 6-1 supermajority on that school board, so they could do whatever the hell they wanted. And spoiler, it just ended this week, but we got to talk about how bad it was for a couple of years. So what did this conservative majority school board do? It is wild, some of the stuff they did. Check out this headline. All of this is within the last 2 years. Cy-Fair ISD trustees vote to omit textbook chapters about topics such as climate change and vaccines. They ripped chapters out of the state-approved textbooks in Texas. Texas was like, these textbooks are fine, and they're not conservative enough. These textbooks are woke. Look at this. Trustees for the third largest school district in Texas voted to omit a series of science textbook chapters that address subjects like climate change, vaccinations, cultural diversity, depopulation, and human impact on the earth and its ecosystems. Really? You're going to get rid of the vaccine chapter shortly after COVID? That seems short-sighted and dumb. And I want you to get familiar with this lady's name right here. Trustee Natalie Blazingame, having reviewed 25 textbooks as part of a committee, made the motion to remove a total of 13 chapters from 5 of those books used in biology, environmental science, earth systems, health science theory, and principles of education and training. So even in a book about the principles of education, she doesn't want them talking about cultural diversity. And in biology, she doesn't want them learning about climate change or vaccines. And they're ripping them out of the book, basically. You can't have them. We don't want kids to see it. They might accidentally learn something. So that's one thing these people did at the school board. What else did they do? Oh, they have no money in the district, so they had to cut corners somewhere. So what did they do? Cy-Fair Independent School District community members critique trustees and state leaders in response to librarian cuts. Look at this. The board members revealed that 50 librarian positions were being eliminated in response to a budget shortfall. They were losing money, and instead of saying, hey, Greg Abbott, why don't you help public education in this state? They were like, why don't we get rid of the librarians? Half of them. I think they had fewer than 100 librarians in the whole district. They got rid of 50 of them because, who needs librarians? No one needs them in a school district. And by the way, what happens when you fire all those librarians? Check out this headline. Cy-Fair's independent school district's libraries are frequently closed after trustees cut librarian positions in half. Yeah, so at a school, the libraries in the school were we're only open on Friday now because that's when we can have a librarian. I feel like that's not too far from saying we only get the school nurse on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So don't get hurt or sick the other days of the week. That's how dumb this policy was. So that's another thing they did. Here's another one. They passed an unnecessary policy requiring any library purchases from the librarians who were left over to go through a 30-day public review process. So if a librarian says, oh, there's a popular book coming out soon from a really popular author, you don't just get to buy the book. You don't just get to put in the order for the book. You have to like post a memo about it so the public has 30 days to weigh in because, you know, maybe that book has a gay character in it and they want to complain. Normally, you let librarians make those decisions using their expertise and their profession's best practices, not in this school district. And also, they made it a lot easier to ban books they don't like. Check this out. Records obtained from the Houston area district show that of the 58 book reconsideration requests submitted just before the conservatives came into power, a total of 52 were made by a new board member, his wife, his campaign treasurer, and a lady who's the wife of another school board member. So the same cabal of conservatives tried to ban a bunch of books in the district, and like they were responsible for all the book bans. And then these conservatives took over the library. And then they gave themselves more power to ban books altogether. Check out this headline right here. We're rushing through the tabs here. Sci-Fair ISD trustees gain power in book banning process. Was there something highlighted here? I thought there was. Maybe there isn't. But basically, they just said we get to get like final say in which books are banned. So that's another thing they did. What else did they do here? Do you remember in Texas, they passed a law saying school districts are allowed to hire chaplains in lieu of hiring trained social workers or counselors? Texas passed that law, and they said every school district needs to vote on this. Do you want chaplains at your school? And I'm grateful to say they did not say yes to this. But look at this. The Sci-Fair ISD Board of Trustees voted 5-2. This is in March of 2024. They voted 5-2 against allowing chaplains to volunteer or work in schools alongside counselors. But trustees Natalie Blazingame, there's her name again, and Christine Kalmbach were the two dissenting votes on the measure. So those two ladies at the bottom there, they were like, we definitely want Christian chaplains in the school. So that's what they were trying to do. And I think, one more thing here. This is another thing they did. This is last August. They voted unanimously to approve Bible-focused elective courses for this school year. Basically, they said yes to allowing elective classes on like Bible and literature, which is maybe fine if it's taught, objectively, which it almost never is. But they voted for that too, because listen, so what if we have to fire librarians? Surely we can hire teachers to teach Bible classes. That's got to be okay. So that's what this school district did. And the last thing I will tell you is that that Texas has passed a law allowing the 10 Commandments to go up in public school districts. And right now, a judge has said no to that. A judge has preliminarily said, no one can put it up. I will issue my final ruling later. And a coalition of church state separation groups has already sued to put a stop to that, and they have been successful. Well, when that coalition filed a lawsuit, one of the plaintiffs in this lawsuit, they come, there you have it at the bottom there, from the Cypress Fairbanks Independent School District. So it's not that the district put up the signs, it's that there was a family that lives in that school district that said, unless a judge steps in, this school district is absolutely going to put up the 10 Commandments. So this is what we're talking about. This is what the board, the 6-1 conservative board, has prioritized over the past couple of years. And here's where it gets interesting, because 3 of those conservative seats were up for re-election on Tuesday. I already said it was a 6-1 conservative supermajority. The one liberal wasn't up for re-election, but 3 of the conservatives were. And in late September, there is a local church, a mega church in Houston called Glorious Way Church, The pastor literally gets up on stage and says, "Hey, megachurch, there are some big elections coming up. I need you to vote for these 3 conservative candidates." And who are they? Riddell Walker, George Edwards, and our favorite, Natalie Blazingame. In fact, let me show you what that looked like at church.
We have some business to take care of this morning. I would like to invite our 3 school board candidates from Cy-Fair ISD to please come forward and take the stage. I want them to greet you for just briefly.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Natalie Blazingame, and I'm a mother. I'm an incumbent. I've been on the board serving you for 4 years, but more than anything, I'm a Christian. I've been in schools for 32 years, and when God gave me an assignment, you talked about it, He literally told me on an airplane that the role was to tear down the over-interpretation of separation of church and state in our schools, as clear as day. And at the time, I was supervising high schools in Houston ISD, and guess what? I am one bold chick, okay? I can do things, but guess what? That actually gave me a little bit of trepidation. I was like, God, that's a big assignment. And that was back in 2015, guys. We're still in the war, but it's now. The time is now. I thank Glorious Way Church for your boldness to take a stand today.
You count Christine and you count these 3 right here, and on a board of 7, just with what we have in the room, that would be a majority to get God's mission accomplished in that school board. You are officially endorsed by Glorious Way Church. But we are just taking the fight up another level. I don't care what the IRS says about this. I don't care about the Johnson Amendment. We're endorsing candidates when we find the right ones. And so you're officially endorsed.
They don't care about the Johnson Amendment because the IRS has said under Trump, we're just ignoring if churches make political endorsements. But did you hear what Blazingame said? First of all, God told her on an airplane that her role was to tear down the overinterpretation of separation of church and state in the schools. And by overinterpretation, she means like the plain reading of the Establishment Clause. And he also mentioned Christine in the audience. That's Christine Kalmbach, who is one of the other conservatives. So all 3 of those people on stage were on the ballot on Tuesday. And going up against them, check this out. This is the promotional flyer for these 3 candidates, Kendra Camarena, Leslie Gilmart, and Cleveland Lane Jr. The 3 of these people said, we are sick and tired of the conservatives controlling this school district and turning everything into some Christian culture war. So vote for all 3 of us. And look at what they say here. Kids over politics. No book bans, no bus cuts. They cut bus routes in this district. No bull, just no nonsense leadership to foster student success now and in the future. Yes, they're committed to safe schools. They want to make this district a destination for parents. Very nice. Okay, so these are the people who are saying, we are so sick and tired of these conservatives. Please vote for us. And guess how this played out on Tuesday? Let me show you this. Riddell Walker, one of those conservatives at the church. Let me zoom out a little bit here. She was defeated. She got 33% of the vote. Well, Gilmart, the liberal, got over 50. One defeated. What about this one? Natalie Blazingame, 34% of the vote, but Cleveland Lane Jr. got 44.79% of the vote. She's defeated. And this last one down here, I'll remove me. George Edwards Jr., 38% of the vote, but Camarena, 49%. He's defeated as well. All 3 of those conservatives lost the election. And that means the 3 people on this slate and that one sole member of the board who is liberal, they now have a 4-3 majority on this school district. That is freaking awesome. And I saw this article this week. Cy-Fair's ISD trustee election could be a referendum on conservative policies in suburban schools. And check this out. Over the last few years, a red wave captured several Houston area school boards. In Katy ISD, Clear Creek, and Fort Bend, conservative majorities took hold, but those same school boards have seen a recent swing back to the center of the political spectrum because all those moms for liberty ladies who are like, well, take over and save our kids from the scourge of books and reading. People are sick and tired of that shit. And I love this right here. Those are our, here we go. Those three that I mentioned earlier, they said they're running as the pro-public education slate. We all have current students in the district. We all currently have skin in the game, Gilmart said. The other slate, the conservatives, they do not. The other slate is not entirely made up of educators. And they also, again, are not advocating to our elected officials for the level of funding we need. This is interesting, too. 4 years ago, when Blazing Game and Henry were first elected, Gilmart and other parents formed the nonpartisan group Sci-Fair Civic Alliance, now something else, to protect local public schools from political and religious extremists. With our then 6-1 extremist board majority, when they voted to cut bus routes and then spent the summer censoring instructional materials, Gilmart said, I just got really fed up and decided I wanted to run at that point. And that is hero talk right there. Because this is the problem. You have people like those people standing up in the church who have no experience and no business running a public school district, but they have all the confidence to do it. And they have this huge built-in system of votes waiting for them. Meanwhile, you will have liberals with like PhDs who are like, well, I'm not the smartest person in the room, so maybe I should stay quiet. So every now and then, you see these local community activists who are like, oh my God, we need to stop bullshit happen in my town. Who's going to do it? And every now and then they step up. And in some cases like this one, they win. And my God, I don't know these people, but I'm so proud of them. It's such a joy to read that story. I love it. And, maybe God is sending the people in that church a sign. Get out of the public schools if you don't want to help them. The public school district is not a place for your religious zealotry. So that is great news. Voters looked at this school board hijacked by religious crusaders and said, we're done with this. They saw how these self-appointed culture warriors just traded science for scripture and replaced librarians with like book censorship committees. And then they took back their schools. So good. I'm so happy to see that. Was there anything else here? I mean, there are plenty of other school districts still poisoned by conservative extremists using similar playbooks, but this is how you defeat them. It's not going to happen overnight. You need to build your coalition. You need to work together. Those three said, vote for all of us. Either we're all going to win or we're all going to lose. That's how this works. And they trusted each other. And now the third largest school district in Texas belongs to people who actually want it to succeed. That is fantastic. Turns out ballots are more powerful than any sermon. I will stop there with this one. What other questions we got here? Sweep. Absolutely. Good news. It was a sweep on Tuesday for progressives in general. Good day. If they don't care about the Johnson Amendment, why would they care about church-state separation? Yeah, very good point. The Constitution doesn't matter if you're a Republican now. It's a suggestion. You don't have to follow it. The pendulum is swinging back. I mean, I did get excited on Tuesday, but we're not there yet. We got to keep going. It's a good start. One of the most exciting things I saw, there's a group called Run for Something, which basically encourages random people who are progressives to like, hey, you're the person that can change this. Go run for school board, city council, whatever, and we will help you do it. And I think they reported after Tuesday, they had like thousands of signups in the day after the Tuesday elections, which is awesome. I mean, how many people ran for office everywhere after Donald Trump got elected in 2016, after the Women's March? I mean, my congresswoman said she decided to run for Congress because of the Women's March in early 2017. Like, that stuff activates good people. That's why I so hate the people who were dismissive of the No Kings rallies like the couple times they've happened, because they're like, well, there's no concrete demands. You're just walking in a circle. You're getting your photo ops. It doesn't mean anything. No, it does. That's the shit that excites the base, that encourages people to get involved. You need that enthusiasm. So don't dismiss that stuff. They might learn something that challenges their fixed values. Actual quote from Texas School Board. I mean, I don't doubt that. Yeah, that's the problem. They don't want kids learning stuff that might challenge whatever they're learning in church. Oh, thank you. New computer fun. Thank you. You have bought me 8 tabs, and I appreciate it. Hemant, what about using an app like OneTab? When you click its icon, it opens all your open tabs into a list. I am aware of apps like that, and I've tried to use them, and it still makes my life a living hell because the organization ahead of time. I appreciate the thought. I will try again. Maybe it'll be different now when I use it. It's not a matter of I just have a million tabs open. They are organized. I promise you, all these tabs are organized. It's just a lot of them, and I'm trying to click, and my computer doesn't move fast enough. All right, I'm jumping to another story. Give me a second. What's the answer on this one? Did not know. Okay. This may be a short story, but I felt this was super important and I wanted to talk about it. I have already made videos about Ryan Walters, the former superintendent of public instruction in Oklahoma, kind of the guy who runs public education in the state of Oklahoma. He recently resigned to take up a job trying to destroy teachers' unions because that's what's fun in conservative circles. And that's great news. He's gone. I talked about how teachers were basically throwing parties for him because he's gone. No one liked this guy. The whole office has been taken over. Ryan Walters' replacement has been so far pretty amazing. And by amazing, I mean just like standard, normal, boring professional, which is exactly what you want if you're running public education. So everyone's been better off since Ryan Walters left. And that's basically what I've talked about when it comes to Ryan Walters up to this point. But specifically, what I have not talked about yet is how good his departure has been for LGBTQ people. Because Ryan Walters was horrible toward LGBTQ people because he's a conservative Christian. And I just want to point you to a couple things he did here. Check out this article from LGBTQ Nation. Let me pull this up really quick. Yeah. Activists cited the state policies on trans youth, anti-trans policies, as contributing to anti-LGBTQ plus animosity there. This includes bills banning gender-affirming care for trans minors, legally defining gender based on sex assigned at birth, and implementing a 2022 law forcing trans students to use the wrong bathrooms. So that's not Ryan Walters, but that's what Oklahoma has been doing to LGBTQ people. What did Walters do? Walters sought to ban LGBTQ books, but teach the Bible in history classes. He pushed the transphobic lie about schools providing litter boxes to students who identify as cats. Really quick, if you're not familiar with that story, they did not have litter boxes in the classroom because students identified as furries. One teacher that was contacted by, I believe, NBC News district said that we keep litter boxes in the classroom because if there is a school shooting and a student needs to go to the bathroom, a litter box is kind of the way we can handle that emergency. But people on the right said, oh, kids want to be furries, and so they want to poop in a litter box because these are not smart people we are talking about here. What else did Ryan Walters do besides spreading that lie? He referred to teachers' unions as terrorist organizations, and still does in his new job. He illegally tried to make rules banning LGBTQ books and transgender bathroom access in schools. He has appeared at events hosted by Moms for Liberty, a right-wing anti-LGBTQ parents' rights group that has been called an extremist hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center. Why are they called an extremist hate group? Because of literally everything they say and do. They love quoting Hitler in their newsletters. He also appointed Libs of TikTok, Chaya Raichek, an anti-LGBTQ activist, as a library media advisor for the state, even though she has no experience, doesn't live in Oklahoma, and has made posts that have led to bomb threats against students. So that's what Ryan Walters has done. So when Ryan Walters leaves his post, teachers are excited. Superintendents and administrators are super excited about this guy leaving. But what happens to LGBTQ students when he leaves? And this is kind of incredible. I just want to show you, there is a crisis hotline in Oklahoma specifically called the Rainbow Youth Project. This is for students who are having very depressing thoughts, which, listen, if you live in Oklahoma and you're a trans student, you're gay or lesbian, you might have really disturbing thoughts. And you can call this hotline and they will try to help you. Check out what has happened since Ryan Walters left. Between March 2024 and September 2025, which is when Ryan Walters was in office, Rainbow Youth Project received an average of 1,431 monthly calls from Oklahoma. Sorry, I said they were based in Oklahoma. They're not, but they got that many calls from Oklahoma, according to a press release. In the 30 days following Walters' announcement of his resignation, that number fell to 914, a 36% decline. Following Ryan Walters' resignation, we have noticed a substantial decrease in crisis calls from Oklahoma. Lance Preston, the organization's executive director, said, the relief expressed by callers is palpable, and we are grateful for the positive impact his departure has had on the mental well-being of our community. Let me say that one again, because holy shit, you're never going to hear a line like that very much. We are grateful to Ryan Walters for the positive impact his departure has had on the mental well-being of our community. Before his exit, nearly 2/3 of Oklahoma callers, 64%, identified Walters as a source of distress. Do you realize how shitty of a human being you have to be when your resignation leads a crisis hotline to say, we notice a substantial decrease in the number of calls because you're no longer in charge of anything? The world is a better place because you're no longer, Ryan Walters, in charge politically. That is incredible. Like, I knew substantively that Oklahoma was better off now that Ryan Walters is gone. I knew qualitatively that it was better with him gone. I had no clue you could put numbers to this thing. That is incredible. Again, look at the headline from LGBTQ Nation here. Calls to hotline decline sharply after Christian conservative resigns as education head. That's this guy's legacy. I don't even have any notes for this, but like, I cannot imagine doing a job and then when I leave, people throw parties because I'm gone, and kids are mentally better off because I'm doing something else with my life. What a garbage person this guy has to be for his departure to literally make everyone's lives better. I mean, I want to see his reaction. I mean, I'm sure he's looking at that and laughing his ass off because he never cared about those kids in the first place. He's a conservative Christian. You think he has empathy? No, he probably thinks empathy is like a woke word. You're not supposed to have that. Like, I'm sure he'll find joy in this. But seriously, what are they teaching at this dude's churches that, again, when you resign from your job, people stop calling hotlines because they're no longer dealing with depression and dangerous episodes? More proof that Ryan Walters' resignation is good for the world. That's it. I just wanted to share some good news with you. What else we got here? That's his legacy, making children so miserable they have a mental health crisis. And not only that, how did he want to resolve mental health crises in schools? He wanted them to see Christian chaplains. That was one of the things he wanted. This is infuriating. I hope Ryan Walters finds out that 64% of queer crisis line callers named him as a source of distress. Take a long look in the effing mirror, Walters. And again, I do hope he finds that out, but also I have no reason to think he would care. And I think he would find that amusing because I don't take him for a guy who has a heart. He's not a role model. He's not a good guy. He's not someone anyone with decency should look up to. We're better off that this guy decided to do a money grab or something and take a job with a nonprofit no one's heard of. Where, by the way, I still follow this guy online, and Ryan Walters is just tweeting his way through it. Everything. Like, he's just trashing teachers' unions, which is what he likes to do. But that's like all he does now. He's not making the world a better place for anybody. I'm thinking very much like It's a Wonderful Life, but hey, the world is better off because you were never born. Now he's gone off to work to disband teachers' unions, right? Yes, he has, leading a group that is financially backed very well, and their whole thing is to destroy teachers' unions. And if he does as good of a job there as he did running Oklahoma schools, well, we can all rest assured he ain't going to do anything useful. So great. First time here, love it, need the community. Well, thank you. I hope you have a good community here to join. Awesome people in the comments. I appreciate the donation. It's a great chat for sure. Yes, it is. All right, let me jump to another story. Den, these trivia questions get harder and harder. Oh, come on. Trick question. Okay. Here's a story I don't know if you have seen because I had not heard about it much until very recently, but it involves Australia. And listen, if you're watching this and you happen to be in Australia, I will apologize in advance if I get the details wrong. I will try to avoid the details and stick to like the top line information here. But basically, in Australia in 2009, they passed a law called the Fair Work Act, and it basically set some ground rules for time off after you have a baby. You know, you could get up to a year of unpaid parental leave after having a baby. You could get a certain amount of paid time off. Like, it's just one of those very sensible, very important pro-family pieces of legislation. And that is awesome. I'm from the United States. I'm jealous. Okay. So last June of 2024, there was an Australian couple that gave birth to a baby. They named her Priya, Priya. She was born prematurely. She was born, I think, only after 6 weeks of pregnancy, so very premature. Now, the law allowed the parents to spend quality time at home so they could devote themselves to taking care of Priya's health, which obviously, I mean, this is always true. You always want to spend time with the baby. But with a baby that premature, you definitely want to devote all your energy to taking care of your child. Now, here's the sad news here. 6 weeks after she was born, Priya suddenly died. And I don't believe it was because of the prematureness or anything like it, different issue, but it was unexpected. Obviously, a tragedy. Your heart goes out to the parents, of course. But at least the parents had all that time off where they could grieve, honor her memory, and do all that, right? No, because according to the mother who worked for a private company, a company she had worked for 11 years, they basically said, hey, you don't have a child anymore, so there's no reason to give you paid time off for your new child because you don't have one. So if you want to earn a paycheck, you are going to have to come back into work. That's a thing they actually did. They said they were going to cancel her paid maternity leave. She could be unpaid, but she couldn't be on paid maternity leave because she's no longer a mother. They gave her like whatever personal time off she had accrued, but like it was less time than her child was alive. It's not enough to deal with all the shit you must have to deal with when you are going through that tragedy. This woman, this mother, had weeks to recover, grieve, deliver the news to family and friends, and cancel appointments with doctors and plan a funeral and all of that. Now, her husband worked for the government. He could get more time off. But the mother had to make that decision of like, do I go back to work really quickly because I don't get paid time off anymore? It's utterly heartless. Here's the thing, though. Under that 2009 law that was passed, everything that was happening there was legal. There was just this loophole that didn't hold private companies up to the same standards as government ones. And so this mother, who really wanted to remain anonymous during all this, she basically posted this petition on change.org. And this is it. Baby Priya's petition. Don't cancel maternity leave for infant death or stillbirth. And it's a heartbreaking thing, but this is what she writes at the end. Everything I just told you, she said, this is legal. And a group called Fair Work Australia told me there was nothing they could do about the canceling of my maternity leave. Legally, employers can cancel paid maternity leave, even though they cannot cancel unpaid leave in the event of infant death or stillbirth. The law needs to change. My husband, who is a teacher under the New South Wales industrial system, got 3 months paid paternity leave while I was back at work. That shows that different humane workplace laws are possible. These should be extended nationally to the federal industrial relations system. We are calling on the federal Australian government to make it illegal for employers to cancel paid maternity leave, which had been approved in the event of infant death or stillbirth, which makes so much sense. And also, again, my heart breaks that this poor woman had to write this petition online because she couldn't do anything else about it. And here's the thing. She posted that petition online, and it seemed to strike a nerve with a lot of people. It got tens of thousands of signatures. It got the attention of politicians. She soon met with Anthony Albanese, who is the prime minister, to discuss, we want to change the law about this. And the reason her back is to the camera is because she still does not want her name going public. So they met with all these people, basically saying, can you just fix the law so this loophole is closed? And here's the amazing thing about this. I want to show you this right here. Pretty quickly, lawmakers in Australia, they got to work. They put together a bill called Fair Work Amendment, Baby Priya's Bill 2025. And they got this through real fast. They went through all these whatever federal procedures you need to do. They did that, And it worked. This week, baby Priya's bill finally passed through Parliament. Like, it's going to be a law. It might be a law as I'm making this. It closes that loophole. And without getting too bogged down in details, because I will get them wrong if I try to explain it to you, it basically says if parents are dealing with the stillbirth or the death of a child, but they were already granted paid time off because they were going to have a child, the company can't just strip that away in the case of a death. They can't rescind it because the baby is no longer alive. And in short, the bill makes sure that what happened to Priya's mom doesn't happen to anyone else ever again. So that is great news all around. I'm so jealous of a government that works. Sometimes I know every government has problems, but like this one did the job. And here's why I wanted to mention this to all of you. Who could possibly be against this? That's where I'm going with this. Who do you think was arguing that we should not pass this amendment and close this loophole? Think about it for a second. If this were happening in the United States, which of the politicians would be like, no, this sounds like a bad idea. We don't want to help these people. And the answer to that is exactly who you would expect. It's a bunch of conservative men. Specifically, members of like what I would call the right-wing flank of the liberal and national parties. They basically said, well, if you allow women who are pregnant to get paid time off, they might get late-term abortions, and then they're going to just take money that they never earned because they never wanted to have the baby in the first place. And you might think I'm exaggerating, but I am so not. Look at this. This is from one of these right-wing politicians. Who is this one? This is from Liberal Member of Parliament Andrew Hastie. He was among those worried about unintended consequences. What did this guy say? I do call on the government, and I note the sensitivity around this. I hope you appreciate my Australian accent right now. But I do call upon the government to clarify that it does not apply to late-term abortions. Fellow Liberal MPs Henry Pike and Tony Payson, as well as estranged Nationals backbencher Barnaby Joyce, who, by the way, if any of you are bored right now, go Google Barnaby Joyce and see what trouble he's been up to. They also expressed their concerns. Mr. Payson said paid parental leave should be available to people who wish to be parents, but for the grace of God, have not become parents through that incident or outcome. But it shouldn't be available to people who don't wish to be parents. Oh my God. These guys are monsters. Now, I will say that most politicians, even from their parties, are like, don't listen to these assholes. They called it a cynical political exercise. People pointed out these guys don't know the difference between a stillbirth and an abortion. They acted like women would use this bill as a reward for having an abortion. I wanted to show you what one other politician said here. Look at this. This is from, let me go back here. This is from the health minister, Mark Butler. Here's what he said. The men who are doing this, he called the comments distressing. The men who are doing this, and they are all men, know the difference between stillbirth and abortion. These men know the distinction. I am concerned that what they are doing is deeply cynical politicking. How often, when we're talking about constraining women's rights, constraining women's support through these incredibly important, at times distressing events in their life, it's men leading the charge. So I do appreciate that everyone's dunking on these guys. By the way, you know who else chimed in on this, on what those guys said? Baby Priya's mother, who again, why are we dragging her into this? But I appreciate that she's speaking out. While the bill was largely supported by all sides of Parliament, a small minority of the opposition, including Hastie, Joyce, and Pike, argued the law could be used by those who have had a late-term abortion. Priya's mom said she was hurt by the derogatory comments. I am deeply upset that some over the past few days who have tried to turn Priya's bill into something it is not. Their words were hurtful, and it was shocking to see the discussion take such an absurd direction. Oh my God, again, why are we making this woman have to deal with any of this? She also said later on, did I miss it here? Let me go back. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed the best line from the mom. Priya's mom said, politicians like this should not be in parliament. No kidding. Put Priya's mom in parliament. That lady's getting the job done. Just to state the obvious, because I'm sure you're thinking it already, not everyone who has an abortion wanted to have an abortion. Sometimes you just need to get one. And when you're terminating a pregnancy that close to birth, it's almost always because of an unexpected situation. Mother's health is in danger. The baby has some catastrophic health concern. It's not going to be viable after you give birth. Like, you were talking about a situation where they've already built the nursery and given this future baby a name. That's what a late-term abortion is. It's not something these women are like, they're not lazy. They're not holding off just for shits and giggles. No one is seriously getting pregnant, then having an abortion just to mooch some paychecks from their employer. No one's having a baby because they want to save money. But these men are like, we know what women are secretly trying to do. They have such little compassion and understanding of why couples and women would make that choice. By the way, health experts who were never consulted by those conservatives, even they chimed in and they're like, what the hell are these dudes talking about? Check this out. Losing a baby after 20 weeks is losing a baby. We should treat anyone who loses a baby with compassion instead of playing politics with people's emotions and people's distress, said Dr. Nisha Coate, the president of the Royal Australian and New Zealand College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, adding that she thought the comments were terrible, cynical, awful. I do appreciate that a doctor is like, what the hell are these idiots doing? That is excellent. By the way, it is not just men either, right? Like, there were a couple of other people who chimed in on this. Let me see if I could, here we go. Let me show you this. Alex Antic, Jacinta Price, and Sarah Henderson voted for an unsuccessful One Nation amendment. Here we go. That would withhold paid parental leave in the case of an intentional termination. But ... the bill eventually passed without amendment. They're saying if you get an abortion, you shouldn't be entitled to paid leave because, I don't know, you didn't want the baby. Like, no, that's not how it works. Why don't you talk to people instead of living in your religious bubble? Have you ever tried that? I will say, despite all these horrible people, it is almost heartening to know how many allies there were in the government defending this bill and how few allies these idiots had to try to oppose it. Like, it's never a winning strategy when politicians in other countries try to mimic American Republicans and white evangelical pastors. Like, it's not going to end well. Don't do it. I did appreciate what Gemma Killen, who is the director who works for the Working with Women Alliance, she wrote a piece in The Guardian about all this. And this is what she wrote in response to everything. Here we go. Baby Priya's mother is my hero. And the 4 conservative men that used her courage to start a fight about terminations are anything but. If the politicians that suggested the bill with incentivized terminations really cared about reducing the number of babies who die in the perinatal period, they would be on the front line fundraising for stillbirth prevention research. They would make speeches about how the rate of stillbirth in Australia has not decreased in several decades and in fact increased in 2022. They would investigate the racism and inaccessibility in the maternity and medical systems that mean Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander mothers are more likely to experience stillbirth. The point being, of course, these men are not going to do that. They don't care about birth. They don't care about mothers. They don't care about babies. They care about looking like they're following the Christian gospel when it comes to abortion, which is to say they just want to hurt people. That's all that is. They do not give a shit about helping people. So the good news is that baby Priya's bill was passed without much opposition. But the bad news is this whole process exposed in such painful clarity who is capable of empathy and who is not. And the idea that anyone, much less a lawmaker who gets to shape public policy, could look at a grieving mother and just see a loophole that is waiting to be exploited rather than a human being in need of compassion, that is just grotesque. I mean, this law just corrects a mistake. It should have been fixed years ago. It shouldn't have taken a tragedy to fix this, but I'm glad it got fixed. So those conservative men and the few women who joined them, they wanted to weaponize grief because of their ideology. So instead of sympathizing with grieving parents, they just treated those parents like, maybe not you, but some of them, they're going to have an ulterior motive. It's this idea that some women have abortions for personal gain is so deeply disturbing. It's misogynistic. It's what we have come to expect from opponents of reproductive rights who cannot fathom why anyone might need to get an abortion, which is why they protest outside clinics with heartless posters and Bible verses that just have no understanding of what anybody there is going through. They don't give a damn about protecting life. They just want to police women. And that's why I think this bill's passage is significant. It rebukes all of that ignorance. It just says, fine, believe your stupid shit. You don't count. You don't matter. You don't have the votes. The rest of us are going to outnumber you. And maybe even for conservatives in parliament, this is not a bill they were willing to stand against. It wasn't good for their political futures. So maybe, even if you want to be cynical about it, most of the conservative politicians are like, no, this isn't this is not a hill I am willing to die on, which is good news. I mean, Australia is not following the path of religious zealots like the Republican Party in America has. So it's nice to see decency win out for a change. I'm sorry it took this tragedy to make it happen, but I was delighted to see that story. Oh, thanks for gifting all the memberships. I appreciate that. Corporations really aren't people. Nope, just heartless machines. It's disturbing. Bereavement leave should be a thing anyway. Making it longer if a birth was involved is not a heavy lift intellectually. Seriously, if anyone dies, you should be able to get some time off of work that is paid. I mean, if you're a company, if you're a private company, you should be offering that because people are going to want to work for you. I don't know why companies don't do it. I know it's like oftentimes a race to the bottom in terms of perks, but like having a heart to people who work for you, and in the case of Priya's mom, worked for your company for 11 years, you're not giving her the benefit of the doubt? What the hell? Typical conservatives, they are always scared to death that they might accidentally help someone. Very, very true. I mean, we're seeing it now with Mike Johnson and the SNAP benefits and Donald Trump and the whole Republican Party. They would rather see people suffer. All right, one last story for you. I'll come back to that. All right, what's the answer? Ooh, did not know that. I guess I could have guessed that. All right, one last story for you here. And there was this bombshell article that appeared on NBC News, and it concerns the world's largest Pentecostal denomination. It's the Assemblies of God. They have 13,000 churches across the United States. They have about 90 million members across the country, across the world. And as you would expect from any large religious organization, they're very good at covering up leaders who are predators. And this is the article that appeared on NBC News' website. You could see this up here. Assemblies of God churches shielded accused predators and allowed them to keep abusing children. And there are so many elements of this story that I want to walk through with you, but let's just start right here. NBC News identified nearly 200 Assemblies of God pastors, church employees, and volunteer leaders accused of sexual abuse over the past half century based on a nationwide search of lawsuits, criminal records, and news archives. Together, they allegedly abused more than 475 people, the overwhelming majority of them children. The allegations stretch into this year when a 10-year-old girl said in a lawsuit that her pastor groped her during Bible study. Yikes. So that's just the beginning of a long report. And the thing that you learn when you read this article is that it's not like the churches were unaware of who these predators were. Even when they knew about the allegations, they often just reinstated them to positions of power. They did not always do background checks, much less thorough background checks. They did not report their own people to local law enforcement because they thought it might expose them to legal liability or go against the biblical idea of forgiveness. And by refusing to do the bare minimum, they then put children in harm's way. So all of these assaults, the article said, the ones we're talking about, where did they take place? They took place in churches. They took place in pastors' homes. They took place on camping trips that took place for the Pentecostal version of the Boy Scouts known as the Royal Rangers. They would take kids on camping trips and then do their thing there. And listen, stories of abuse are always horrific, and I am going to share some of the ones in this article with you, so you have been warned. But I feel like you got to see this. You got to understand. You got to read this because it is disturbing, and you need to know how depraved these people are. I don't know. These details just had me like, I had to read these slowly because I just couldn't believe what I was looking at here. So check this out. Here. Survivors say they were violated in sanctuaries, at pastors' homes, and in tents on camping trips. We said that. A California preacher was accused of holding knives to children's chests while forcing them to perform sex acts on each other. In Louisiana, a youth leader confessed to drugging and assaulting 3 boys during a sleepover. A couple in New Mexico said their pastor used his spiritual authority to drive them apart, then coerced the wife into sex. Of the alleged abusers, 123 were ministers. Nearly half of those were youth pastors. We got to have a registry for them. Others were church employees, youth group leaders, or Sunday school teachers. Dozens were accused of luring boys through the Royal Rangers, a Pentecostal version of the Boy Scouts. Wait, I'm sorry. It gets worse somehow. You're gonna hear me say a lot of that. In interviews with NBC News, they described being molested in a church van, stalked in a church nursery, raped with a statue of Jesus plucked from a mantle, told to repent as if they had done something wrong. How many more, they wondered, would have to suffer before the Assemblies of God decided that protecting children mattered more than protecting itself? Yeah, disturbing stuff. When one person reported pastoral abuse to a congregation leader, she was told demonic spirits had gotten a hold of her. Again, as if she was the problem, not the alleged abuser. That whistleblower is now part of a lawsuit against the church accusing leaders of concealing decades of abuse. Now, the Catholic Church has gone through this. The Southern Baptist Convention has gone through this, where these are large denominations that have dealt with their own, or tried to deal with their own, sexual abuse crises. They have taken some steps to decrease the problem, but they've also taken steps to push back against serious accountability. But here's the problem with the Assemblies of God. They appear to have taken no steps to show that they take any of this seriously. They might say churches should do background checks, but it's not like they're punishing the ones that don't. So who cares what you say about it? And they say this has everything to do with the fact that they're just a coalition of independent churches. It's not like the Catholic Church. There's no Vatican. They're just like the Southern Baptists in a lot of ways. They have a group of people who handle some organizational things at the very top, but basically they're just a coalition of a whole bunch of churches that want to use the Assemblies of God franchisee label. You know what I mean? But that's also how the Southern Baptist Convention works, and they have been able to kick out churches that harbor known predators. So how come the Assemblies of God can't do it? And when they responded to the NBC News article, or at least when NBC News came to them and said, listen, we're going to publish this stuff. Do you have anything to say about it? Here's what the Assemblies of God said. The General Council of the Assemblies of God, the denomination's governing body in the U.S. based in Springfield, Missouri, declined interview requests and did not answer questions about specific cases. In a statement, it said the church grieves with anyone who has been hurt through the actions of an abuser and described itself as a leader in preventing and combating child sexual abuse. Yes, and George Santos is a leader in honesty. What? Why are you even saying that? If you're not going to make a comment, why would you also make a comment about how awesome you are at preventing this stuff when you know the article is going to be all about how you're definitely not doing that? How do you have people running this organization and none of them have any PR experience? What the hell are you doing? But in any case, it is a lie when they said they're a leader in preventing and combating child sexual abuse, because the denomination does give a stamp of approval to ministers. They can't lead a church unless they have that stamp of approval. So they could always just say, we're not going to give that stamp of approval to you unless you go through the following checklist, until you pass a background check, unless anyone who accuses you of anything, unless we have investigated that. But apparently that option is not on the table. In fact, here's what the article said about that. The Assemblies of God enforces a national credentialing system for ministers, giving the General Council power to discipline, restore, or expel those who fail to meet its theological and moral standards. But it only requires a church's lead pastor to be credentialed. That gap gives congregations wide latitude to hire and restore youth pastors, worship leaders, and other associate ministers, including those with histories of misconduct. And it's very clear that the General Council's not even doing much for the credentialing of the lead pastors. What happens if they're leading a church where they brought back an accused predator? Why not say, well, we're taking back your credentials. You don't get to lead this church anymore. They're not interested in doing that. And according to NBC News, all of this was discussed nearly 3 decades ago. In 1997, they had one of their general council meetings, and there were proposals. Why don't we just ban anybody who has done any of this predatory behavior from getting ministerial credentials? Sounds like a pretty good idea. But there was apparently pushback from people. Seriously, there was pushback from people, and I want to show you this. I don't want to read it to you. I just want you to see this for yourself. Why did that not pass? Some ministers pushed back. What about pastors who abused children before becoming Christians, you guys? Who's thinking about them? And others debated whether the ban should extend to pastors who molested 16 and 17-year-olds and they didn't have intercourse. Come on, you guys. We're cool with that, right? We shouldn't be mad about that. They're 16. The minister fondled them. Who cares? That's seriously their argument to why they shouldn't go after pastors who are accused of this stuff. What the hell are we even doing here? The delegates basically said, hey, lawyers for our church, can you guys make sure, what if we tried to revoke the credentials of some of these people? Could we be sued over that? And the lawyers were like, yeah, you might be. And so they voted down the idea years later, partly because they said, I got to find this for you here. They shot down the idea of revoking these credentials. Why? Because requiring background checks of every minister, they said, would be expensive. It wouldn't reduce legal liability, and it could unjustly punish those convicted of relatively minor offenses before finding Jesus. And by relatively minor, they mean you were just touching without consent, not that a child can give it, an underage person. That's the Assemblies of God for you. They are moral people. So after all of this, after the article came out, the Assemblies of God was like, maybe we should respond to this article. And so they posted this like 5-minute video online. These are two of these people. This is Doug Clay, the general superintendent. And I don't know, I forgot that lady's name, but these are two of the people who run the denomination. They basically put out a long video. I don't have a clip for you, but they said we have a zero tolerance policy when it comes to abusers, and we have, quote, always held that position. You will not find proof of that, but there you go. They also, in that same statement, equated ministers who sexually abuse children with ministers who were in consensual same-sex relationships. As if both of them are sinning, and we have no tolerance for people who do either of those things. But the implication still in those statements is that if any credentialed minister is found to have abused a child or made the mistake of being with someone of the same sex, of course we'll get rid of them. But anyone below them in the pecking order, who cares? And by the way, what happens if a minister loses his credentials? Guess what? He just has to go through like Christian rehab that the church sponsors, and then they can be right back into the mix. I should tell you, advocates tried to get the denomination to pass stronger policies more recently. But again, legal liability was the barrier. Basically, the church said, if we create a policy to ban abusers, but we don't enforce those rules, anyone can sue us. The victims can sue us. And if we get rid of someone, but they didn't do everything, they could sue us. And we don't want to be sued. So let's just not have a policy. Let's just, whatever. There might be some victims, whatevs. The alternative, of course, is use your money and do the investigations and enforce the damn rules. So the end result here is a lot of unchecked trauma, and also, I should say, dozens of pending lawsuits that now accuse the churches of shielding predators, silencing victims, and allowing abuse to fester unchecked. Check this out right here. This is from one of the survivors who has spoken out against all this. In response to NBC News findings, she has joined a chorus of survivors demanding action. They want the Assemblies of God to repent for past failures and commission an independent review of its handling of abuse. They also want the General Council to create a system to warn churches when a minister or volunteer has been credibly accused, and to mandate basic protections in every congregation. She offered a simple first step. Stop giving the lawyers a vote. Because, of course, the lawyers, it's like HR at a company. They're not there for you. They're there to protect the company, right? So it is clear the denomination is more concerned about its bottom line than the people who make up the congregations. So if you are worried about getting sued for protecting predators, the solution should be making sure those predators are never allowed to be religious leaders in your denomination, not trying to avoid the lawsuits altogether. By the way, you know how bad this problem is? NBC News has an entire vertical, like a series of columns under the series called Pastors. Is it called Pastors? Yeah. Pastors and Pray. They have a whole section with a bunch of articles all about the Assemblies of God. They had to create a special section on their website just to discuss these stories because this is not a one-off. So, like I said, those people put out their statement. The Assemblies of God leaders put out their statement. They said the piece was, quote, peppered with misleading information and that they go above and beyond what they need to do to protect children. Well, one of the problems with that statement is that this lady right here that I mentioned earlier, her name is Donna Barrett. She's the general secretary of the denomination. She's one of the people who told the denomination to listen to lawyers and rejected a policy targeting ministers who neglected to follow child abuse prevention recommendation steps. And she said adopting that policy would play right into the hands of plaintiffs' attorneys. So the takeaway from all this is that the Assemblies of God has had every opportunity to act. They've been able to do something for decades. They have chosen not to. They have chosen self-preservation over action. They do not care about their flock. It is just a haven for predators who know there's going to be no oversight. And the numbers speak for themselves. Hundreds of leaders, thousands of victims, and a leadership structure that knowingly allows this cycle to continue. At what point do the leaders of this church and anyone who goes to one of these churches decide that the problem is too big to ignore? At what point, like if you have a zero tolerance policy, how many violations of it need to happen before you admit, okay, maybe this is not working? These people have no moral authority. And this is complicity at this point. Like every day that the Assemblies of God delays reform, they are sending a message to predators that there will always be a second chance for them. Meanwhile, the children whose lives they destroy never even get their first chance to do anything. Like this is just baked into the governance at this point. And that means every local Assemblies of God congregation is a potential danger zone, and you should treat it that way. I would not feel safe telling a family to go visit that church. Like, why would you place your trust in an institution like this? It makes no sense. And without mandatory oversight and independent overseers, no member is safe, and no parent should believe their children are safe in their hands, in these church leaders' hands either. Oh, I know. That was a big one. Sorry to end on that note, but there you go. What questions do you have here? The story hurts. I hope those pastors are held to account. Me too. They won't be, but I wish that were true. To follow up on my suggestion, anyone that works with a vulnerable population should need a license. Part of the criteria is the screening I talked about. Seriously, I mean, if you're a teacher, you have to jump through so many hoops, as you should at a public school. I don't know why priests, or I don't know why any of these institutions, even if they're private, don't require it. It's a good habit. This is why crime should be handled by police and in courts, never by churches, schools, or company HR. Right. This is why you need secular oversight if you actually want. I mean, and by the way, I say that knowing full well, it's not like the cops are always going to help. I know that. I know the courts are not always on our side either, but I don't trust church-run investigations. Like, you can't let them self-police because they never do a good job of it. They are pushing back because if they ban them, they won't have any pastors. I seriously think that plays a part in it. Like if we shut down the churches that do anything bad, we're going to run out of churches. And the Assemblies of God is one of those denominations that I believe is losing numbers every year. So they're trying to maintain what they got, and they don't want to rush closing these places down. So what if there are some predators in the mix? It's never about faith. It's never about accountability. It's all about money. Yeah, they don't want to be sued. They don't want to pay out lawsuits that they will lose. So the abuse can continue, I guess, is their conclusion. You're in big trouble for ending with this story instead of a happy one. I'll be honest with you. I had switched those because I thought I wanted to share the Australia one with you first. And now I realize I should have ended with that one. That was a happy ending in a way. Sorry, I'll try better next time. Maybe there'll be a lot of happy stories next week. All right, I'm done. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Den, for helping me out and keeping me sane. Remember, you can subscribe at friendlyatheist.com. I appreciate that. And you can support this channel by going to patreon.com/Hemmons. I should be back next week, same time. I'll see you then. Have a good one.